I go where I'm loved. rather than try and fix the problems I needed to have at home. No, I went, yeah. So I wasn't being a the person I needed to be in the home, and b I wasn't being loved for who I was unconditionally in the home. So instead of trying to show up and serve in the home and practice what I preach, and I just went to those people who already saw my value. Um, you know, I fortunately have stepped back enough to realize that, and I've been fortunate enough to build something great and still have my family intact.
All right, Ryan, let's do this thing, man. So I just told the audience in the interview, and let me reiterate again, that sometimes there are connections made and you don't question them. You just roll with them. That's the surrender experiment. That's the untethered soul, Michael Singer. That's just, okay, universe, I got it. You put this guy in front of me like 10 times. So I'm not just going to watch his stuff. I'm going to reach out to him. So that's what I did. I watched a bunch of interviews that you did on YouTube. The last one was Matthew McConaughey, who I'm a huge supporter of and fan of, as I'm sure you are. And my book club's reading Green Lights right now, and I was like, okay, this is totally aligned. I'm reaching out to this dude. This final straw. We're doing this. So I don't know you. I only found out a tad bit about you. So the audience and I are going to find out more about you and your podcast and your mission as we roll here. And I think that's
Sweet.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for being here. So your background, go all the way back, and I want the audience to get close to you, because they're gonna everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a similar story of pain or of some kind of fear or something. What's yours?
Oh, thanks for the space. Yeah, I'm 34. I live here in the southwest of England with my wife, who I've been with since school. We've been together since 15. We got two kids, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And, I grew up in I had a great childhood. I'll be really clear, I'll be really honest from the start, but it's not without pain. Like, as you said, we've all experienced pain. And my pain was, my dad left when I was 6 months old. So I didn't really grow up with him. Reconnected later on in kind of like teens, but I didn't grow up, and mum remarried, and I had a stepdad, and that was all great. Family unit was great. Brother and sister through with him, but 12 years old, mum separates from him, and I guess that was really pivotal, really, because that's such a crucial age. I think 12, and I look back at my own journey, as a coach, and sometimes you've got to apply some of these things to yourself, and everything I've ever really connected to anything good about me is about this sense of love and empathy and wanting to be a great nurturer and parent. It comes from this pain of being abandoned. It's a heavy word for me, but I feel like the only two male role models in my life, they've abandoned me, and I think that had a couple of effects on me. I wouldn't say I would show up every day in the world as a 15-year-old kid, woe is me, I miss my dad. But I guess it made me into a human being that did two things. One is just never ask for help. I just never relied on anybody, and I think that's it's a great strength, but also a great weakness. And
Sure.
My mum was epic. 3 or 4 jobs. She's the epitome of like optimism and positivity. So she's my role model. But I've just always had I was the eldest of all my siblings. Just a curious human being, loved to learn about people watchers. So I fell in love with psychology, and I went to university. First person in my family to go to university, did psychology. And I fell in love with this idea of, why do naughty people do naughty things? And so I naturally pursued kind of policing, wanted to be a criminal profiler. And I joined I remember my wife. We got to the age of 21, and she's like, "I need to move out now. I've had enough of living at home. I feel suffocated. Can you please just get a job so we can move out?" So I got an entry level job. I ended up taking 999 calls, emergency calls, and dispatching officers on the radio. And I did that for a good 3.5 years. I mean, as a 21-year-old, that is a steep learning curve. Dealing with people in their most vulnerable moments in life. But I loved it. I thrived. I was very, very good at it. Calm under pressure. But it's just, you can't do it forever. The shift work was painful. I applied to be a police officer, thought that was going to be my 30-year career. I was successful, but the government spending cutbacks kind of kicked in and my intake no longer existed. So I had to rethink. I thought that, that was quite painful. I thought, here's my 30-year career sorted. Here's my life sorted. And all of a sudden, I'm back searching. So I just got back to doing something that I was good at. I became an analyst, became really good, and at that point I became both a line manager and a parent at the same time. And I think that was really transformational, because here I was in the policing situation where leadership was rank, status, position, hierarchy. Yeah. And yet at home, I'm sacrificing and serving this little thing. I'm giving and I'm serving and I'm nurturing and I'm developing. And in my team, I'm supporting, I'm nurturing, I'm developing, I'm giving people place to contribute and to matter. And I this is the same thing. Like parenting, leadership, it's not about rank and position and status. So I fell in love with this concept of leadership being service orientated. And that's just started, this lifelong pursuit of learning to first and foremost be a better leader myself. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, using coaching, and I've built this little community here on Facebook. Started, it just could always better than yesterday. It was initially mindset. I was very much driven by mindset and psychology and thinking, but the more I've got to heart of leadership, it's love, and it's about love and service and sacrifice. So my logo quite here is a heart in the very center of it, and I believe that I will help the world be always better than yesterday. For every single heart-centered leader, I help bring their heart work into the world.
Love that, man. I love that. I was very curious about your brand when I saw the logo, and again, I don't question the universe anymore. I know it's got me. I know it's got my back. So when I saw that, I was like, always better than yesterday. That's a cool concept. And there are a lot of always better than yesterday on iTunes. But yours is the warmest, most welcoming, in all honesty. Because if you type in always better than yesterday on iTunes, you'll find a couple more. But yours has the logo kind of front and foremost and center. And then like a little bit of your face on there. And that was what kind of drew me. And so let me go back for a second. Do you think it's interesting, because I talk to people who have a parent who left, and everybody is different, and obviously the variables are going to be different of literally everybody and everybody's situation and where they are in the world and where they are in whatever. But how did you not go down the super resentment, super anger, acting out, getting in trouble to try and get that love and attention? What was it that shifted you to get your love and attention in a different way? Because you hear so many people like, my dad left and I got into drugs. My dad left and I beat up my teacher. Like, they're just kids that are looking for love.
Yeah, 100%. I was a young man. The way I showed up as a young man was two things. One was arrogant. I always used to reject being called arrogant because I never felt it in my heart. But here's the perception that I gave off. I was so looking for validation and so looking for someone to be proud of me that I would tell people how good I was. I would tell people how much I knew. I would tell people how great I was doing. And I didn't mean to, do it in a way that put me above anybody else. It was a young man showing up into the world, trying to have someone be proud of him, because he didn't get told he was loved when he was a kid. He certainly didn't hear the words, "I'm proud of you." And I look back at it, and I never owned the Arrogance, but I can see how it came across. Yeah, and secondly is the I mean, for your audience members that have faith, the way that I describe this is that in the Bible, Paul goes to God and he says, "Please remove these thorns from my flesh." And what he really means by that is, we all have pain, we all have the weakness, and for me, mine is love and validation. And I built this great community, Always Better Than Yesterday, where I got a lot of love and validation.
Yeah.
A lot of it. A lot of people were seeing the best of Ryan Hartley. My wife and I, we were both running businesses at the time. She was a network marketer. She had a team of 300, was doing great things, but we were doing great things in separate offices. We were going in separate ways. We were growing apart, and the problem I had, and this comes to the flaws in me, my character, and my thorns in my side, is that I go where I'm loved. rather than try and fix the problems I needed to have at home.
Oh.
No, so I wasn't being A, the person I needed to be in the home, and B, I wasn't being loved for who I was unconditionally in the home. So instead of trying to show up and serve in the home and practice what I preach, and I just went to those people who already saw my value.
Yeah, I totally get that.
I fortunately have stepped back enough to realize that, and I've been fortunate enough to build something great and still have my family intact.
So I want to dig into that for a second. I had that same experience, and my parents are together, except there was a big mix of conditional and unconditional love in my household. Nothing wrong with that, because my parents listen to this. So when they're listening, I don't want them to think, well, why am I the asshole? Why don't they go? You're not. I'm who I am today because of them and their leadership and their failures and their fuck-ups and everything in between. I'm who I am today, for the world, like the guy I am for the world and for myself and my family and everybody. But I had that same thing, and it wasn't like some big trauma. It wasn't some big miraculous thing that happened. It was a, like, can anybody recognize me for the amazing stuff that I do? And then the conditioning became, same as you, the conditioning became, well, if you don't recognize me, I'll find somebody that will. And so then I'm seeking crowds and spaces and people that will validate my greatness and my, whatever, my skill or my talent or whatever it might have been at the time. So I want to dig into that for a little bit, because I know there's people out there that are just wondering, they're like, it's like their audio's not matching the video at this point in their life. Many people, I coach hundreds of high-level men around the world and some women. And most of the time, they are coming into coaching probably for like the 5th to 10th time that they're trying coaching. And they come to us and I say, look, the only way this is going to work is if your audio really doesn't match the video and you are driving yourself nuts trying to catch up, trying to watch this movie and the sound's 3 seconds off. And that's when, like, real transformation happens. But the challenge is that we all have these groups that we run in, these environments that we operate in, where we don't want to be there anymore. The old us did, but the new version of us, especially if we're actually working on ourselves and growing personally, is saying, okay, something's not adding up here. Something's not working here anymore. And that's that, which is like, there were some friend groups that I used to run in where I'm like, I don't need validation from these people anymore. Like, I feel like I'm way more elevated. Not like a arrogant way, but I have personally elevated myself out of this crew. Now I start seeking more validation from elsewhere, but that had to stop eventually. So I want to go through that for the audience. I want to go through from the like the trajectory and the process of you seeking that validation and where that kind of led you to. Do you still seek validation today?
Yeah. The simplest way I can phrase it is that the way I can look back at it is I was a young man leading for love, not from love. So for as long as I was showing up in the world without my own, let's use the words of Dr. Gary Chapman in the 5 Love Languages, he calls it a love tank. My love tank was empty. And I was using my community and the great feedback to fill my love tank. My love language is words of affirmation, and I was getting plenty of them. The thing is that kind of cost me the things I needed to invest in was the the roots of my relationship, because I certainly weren't seeing the fruits of them. And I got to a point where I gave up hope and belief in a future with my wife, and I made the decision that love was so important to me and the feeling of being loved that I was going to be courageous enough to leave the family home. So 2019, I made the tough decision let's context this. I'm a young man who had 2 father figures abandon him. And the
What else do you know?
The thing that killed me was, what does that mean? What does that make me? And there was something humbling when you get put in the same position where you understand how your father might have left.
Sure.
And there's something, something about that just brought me a sense of, shit. But, so here was I making a similar decision, very, very different circumstances, very different values. But I left the home. I was living back at my mum's house, early 30s, sleeping in my old bedroom, except it was decorated, now looked like there was a lampshade that was like going to come to life like some Beauty and the Beast, kind of like, it was awful. It was one of the worst months of my life, but I was at peace. Mm-hmm. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't peaceful. I was taking, the stress was not knowing what to do. The stress was do I, don't I?
Yeah.
I was in a lot of peace because I took action, and what that enabled me to do is just to start listening to my heart around, and that might sound cliche, but sometimes we can be in our mind too much. What should I do? What do people expect me to do? What shoulda, woulda, coulda. Whereas when you just listen to your heart and your heart's desires, it's a case of, okay, well, what do I want? Where do I want to be? Who do I feel more energized around? Who do I feel more loving around? And am I willing to put myself back in a situation where actually I'm going to have to be humble? I'm going to have to go, right, okay, I'm going to put this to one side. And there was a point at the end of the month where my wife and I, we decided to bang our heads together and go again. That then sparked a transformational journey. Again, spiritual faith. My wife, in our struggles, found God, and she was like, you need to find him too. And I was like, no, I do not. I'm a man of science. I don't want anything to do with a big man. Thank you. Goodbye. But the irony is, I feel like I've been pursued in ways, and I don't know if you have faith or all your listeners, but I certainly didn't want that, and I certainly didn't pursue that. But there were a series of events that happened as we got back together. I went to a festival that was primarily for Christians. I thought it was going to be 10,000 Ned Flanders in a field. It was my idea of a worst nightmare, but it was incredible because I'm a people watcher, remember?
Yeah.
I'm a people watcher, and there was these people having great experiences, great communities, all walks of life, and I was curious. I got hooked. And then I went to a church, and it was just a Father's Day commissioning. The pastor invited some men down the front just to say some words over the fathers. I thought, well, I'm a father. What's the worst that can happen? As he's saying these words, he said, that's it, women. If you want to put your hands out towards these men, you do that. And with that, it was like I was Hadoukened. It was like she Hadoukened me right in my spine, and my whole body caught fire. And my eyes just streamed, and I just went back to my wife in their seats. I said, I don't want to talk about this ever again. I was like, I don't want to talk about this ever again. I just want to say that I feel like a child of God, and that is it. And I guess from that moment, 2 years ago, Father's Day 2 years ago, I've just advanced and learned and tried to tap into this sense of spirituality, about the love that God has for me. It's the most unconditional love I've experienced. And it enables me that the more I grow in my faith, it enables me to lead from love, not for love. The more I know that I show up in the world seeking validation, seeking love, seeking it, whatever that might be, seeking volumes of views or the next guest, the moment I know that I'm doing that, I'm in my mind, I'm not in my heart. And I know that I need to take some time and through various kind of breathing techniques, through heart math, through reading, it brings me back to an intimate experience with what I believe to be God. But in effect, it's the vibration energy of love. God is
Totally.
love. God is light. God is in all. He's through all. And the Heart Math Institute says that when our bodies are in states of love, we emit photons, which is light. And I just find that there's some real cool universal truths that just all point towards the fact that if we can give ourselves what we need, if we can meet our needs and we can bring love from within, our natural state as human beings is to be more loving, to be more kind, to be more caring and compassionate. So just to top off the conversation from where you started it, is that I get to choose where I go. I get to choose where I serve. If I'm leading from the outside in, I need to go back to my community or these places for me to feel love in the middle. What I try and do now is feel love, realize I lack nothing, because everything in marketing is most successful when we are left to feel inadequate without it.
Totally. Totally.
So if I can come to the world, and this is why I do stuff in the mornings, not in the evenings, is if I can fill up my love tank in the morning, I can come to the world knowing A, I lack nothing, and B, choose who I love.
Dude, I love that. So much in there that's gold. You have it so streamlined now. I went through a very similar piece of that. I didn't have the dad abandonment. I still had the challenges that my parents faced because I was an only child. I got all of them. The insecurity from my mom, my dad's mom died when he was a very young kid, and so he was dealing with that. But I didn't understand my feelings and emotions. And so that's one thing as a father that I work my kids through, is understanding their feelings and emotions and what they're doing, what's going on inside, and how to express it in a non victimish way, but in a powerful way. And like, hey, I'd just like to share this with you. Regardless of what you do with it, I'm just getting it out because you're a safe person. And I want them to know that not everybody's going to be a safe person. You got to be careful. You got to be aware of your choices. However, there are many people out there that will just love on you, open their arms for you to talk to them. That's what we needed. If we would have had that, we wouldn't be the guys we are today. However, our missions were set before we were born, and we had to get through those things to be on these missions. Right? The Men on Purpose mission: elevate, educate, empower, enrich, and evolve men to be on purpose so they can reveal their most authentic self. Wouldn't that be awesome if we had that when we were like 20 years old? Reveal the most authentic self and live the most fulfilling and regret-free life possible. But I went through that same thing. And when you were talking about, I now am very clear why the universe was like, here's Ryan again, here's Ryan again, here's Ryan again. Because I had the same type of journey in 2019, but not with my wife, with a business partner who stole a ton of money. And I got woken up one morning and I thought my wife woke me up, and somebody woke me up, but it wasn't her. And they were like, you got to get to Nativity. And I ran downstairs, I got dressed real quick. I ran downstairs. I'm like, let's go. Why are you in your PJs? And she was like, what are you talking about? And she was with her sister was here and her sister's daughter. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you didn't just come up and wake me up and say, let's go to Nativity? It's a church. And she's like, no, but it looks like you need to go. And I was like, I'm going. I'm not going to fight this anymore. Like, I've been fighting her for many years because religion in my family was such a challenge. Like, it was just such a challenge all the time. And it was an area of contention and pain and fear and just ridiculousness. Catholic school will do that to you. And so I went and I bawled my eyes out, because that message that he was speaking was right there for me. There was 1,000 people in that room. The only person he was talking to was me. And this is a very different type of church. The church actually revolves around you versus you having to revolve around the church, which is the church's normal thing. And so after that, I stayed and I asked questions. How can I serve? How can I help? I said, look, I grew up in a Jewish and Catholic household. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to go with this. And I'm like this, let go, hands off. So that progressed to helping in some small men's groups or small groups, some men's groups, which started to solidify my coaching business that I already had and I was already running. And then I started meeting new people, and I started meeting higher level people who were like, look, I know that God can't do this for me. And I've been living this lie to myself and the lie was that I don't have to be responsible for my activity or my actions, that I don't have to
Yeah.
be accountable to the actions that I take once this entity, God, the universe, puts something in front of me. And I was like, oh, wow. Now that's very clear for me now, too, because I was always against so much of the God will do this for you if it's meant to happen. I'm like, well, but
Mm.
what about my free will? What about my power of choice that he gave? What about that? And that gave me clarity. And then all of a sudden I started meeting these dudes and my coaching business started expanding and my relationship got tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And so I get that. And I'm not a religious guy today. I
Mm.
just now am very aware that there is some other entity or energy out there acting upon me.
Yeah.
Period.
I love that. I love that. And the name of your show, Men on Purpose. Like my journey around purpose. I've loved the pursuit of pursuing my own purpose, and it started with watching Simon Sinek's TED Talk and getting curious about my own. And in the early days, I was very fortunate enough that everything was going great. I found my purpose through my passion, what I love to do, which was around helping people be confident, authentic, clear in mind, and so that they can show up and be better than they were yesterday. I got the clarity and the depth of my purpose through my pain. And you asked about, how did you show up? How did you not become resentful? Well, I had something revealed to me that was still there. I thought I had plowed my resentment into becoming the best dad I could be. Yet I think I was just before my 30s. I was going for a senior leadership program, and senior leaders were sat around with my social media profile. So I had started to use Instagram as a way of sharing my heart and my mind for leadership, helping people. And I hear comments like, who is Ryan Hartley? What does he know about leadership?
Right.
He's full of it. And that triggered me more than I anticipated. And it was because I was made to feel like I didn't matter, like I wasn't relevant, like I wasn't significant, like I didn't belong. I'd given 12 years of my life to that police force, and yet here I am being made to feel like I don't belong, or even that maybe my heart is being misjudged. So the depth of my purpose came clear through that experience, is that I love helping people avoid that pain. And in doing so, I help create leaders who make people feel like they're mattered, who make people feel like they belong, like they can contribute their gifts, their skills, and their talents, that they can come to a team from an unconditional love perspective, and and that they get the leaders that they deserve, because those leaders made such an impact on me,
Yeah.
but in a negative way. And then I would go home and not be who I needed to be for my family. And if I could flip that, and if I can help support and create and develop, nurture leaders who did lead with love, with kindness, with care, with curiosity, with compassion, then the ripple effect of that is just huge. And it comes from, I got to the point where the end of 2019, I was talking to my friend Jonathan from Tennessee. He's like, "You need to burn the boats, man. Burn the boats." I'm like, "Jonathan, I got a mortgage. I've got 2 kids. I can't burn the boats." But the pain was such that I couldn't keep going. I couldn't keep going back to work. It was killing me. So I decided to have faith, make a leap of faith, and trust that God had given me a gift, and that it was my duty to use that. In the book of Peter, it talks about the gifts and the skills and the talents we have. They're not for us, they're for those in the world that need it. So I took a leap of faith, and I made a commitment to start, leaving space for the miracles. And, having Matthew on my podcast is just one of those many miracles that 2020 brought me, or certainly the start of 2021, that I could never have made happen.
Yeah, dude. That's awesome. That's so cool. What do you there's something I wanted to ask you about the marriage. I just forgot it. Anyway, do you think that this journey that we're on, so kind of finding your passion and your mission through your journey and the process, we don't know what would happen, because what happened, right? And if we're the type of people that aren't making meaning of what happened, except for that it was beautiful and wonderful, then that's it, right? It had to happen. It had to happen because the effectiveness of me as a coach, the level of compassion and leadership that I have, and openness and love and dedication
Yeah.
and everything, is because I've been through so many deep, dark things that scared me so badly. And that the people who reached out for me to help me up were so impactful in my life. I said, this is I've got to do this. So like I found my passion and my mission through my journey and process through the pain and through the
Yeah.
shit and
100%.
through the things that I was doing. Like you had to have that job and you
Mm-hmm.
had to have those leaders that weren't really leaders. They were probably managers who were ineffective at best. And you had to have that. So does everybody have to go through the pain to be able to tap into their passion and their greatness? Or are they only going through, or they're only getting to 50% or 80% of their actual mission and passion? Because let's face it, the only way to get clarity is to get rid of the things that are in the way and clouding. It's the only way. If you want to see to the
Yeah.
bottom of a 5 foot piece of water, you stop stirring up the mud. And when you are still and you stop moving around because you're nervous or you're moving around because you constantly have to move, the mud will settle. You see the bottom, you get your answer, and then you pivot. Simple as that. It's
Yeah.
elimination. Elimination has to be
Yeah.
present.
Yeah. Do we have to go through pain to get to a purposeful, meaningful life? No. I think pain, the purpose of pain is to help us, to give us reason to move. And I think if the reason sometimes pain is such a driver of purpose is because it reveals to us what's important. It reveals to us within us what we probably value, what we deem to be important. One of the greatest things that I've gained from interviewing 140 people on the podcast is that the overarching lesson I continue to take away is it's not what happens to us. It's not life that happens to us. It's how we choose to respond to what's happened to us. So I interviewed a guy called Austin Hatch. He's from Michigan. He survived 2 fatal plane crashes at an odds of like 16 quadrillion to 1 or something ridiculous. He, 2 separate plane crashes, fly into the lake house. I think it took out his mum and siblings on the first time. And then 8 years later, took out dad's stepmom. And you think, okay, fine. There's something, and I know what you said at the start around trying to have someone be relatable. And sometimes having someone like Austin, you go, well, do I need to have that happen to me? No, you don't. You absolutely don't. But in extreme circumstances, if someone like that can take life and go, I'm going to make this mean something, then we can certainly take a couple of senior leaders looking around at my social media profile and use that for good. Because we're all humans. We all have this uniting experience of emotion. And our challenge is to be able to tell stories that connect us through that universal expression of emotion: love, fear, joy, passion, frustration, jealousy. We've all experienced what it means to be human. I think if we can help connect on a human level with that through those emotions and through those stories, it doesn't really matter what's actually happened to us. What really matters is how we choose to use that in the moment and how we feel about it. And the thing I've come to realize is that there's an element of love to that. When we get to use what we're naturally good at, it feels great. We get more energy from doing those things than it takes away. When we get to help people overcome the pain with which we've once experienced, so maybe they don't have to go through something similar, or maybe we help them through that quicker, we can feel alive. And when you help someone in the world just simply because you love to do it and you would have done it anyway, and they help you, and sometimes they pay you, you start to think, this is it. This is the secret. Like, too many people think this isn't possible, whereas in reality, they just don't pursue it.
100%. Yeah, dude. And then there's the insecurity. Like, let's go deep here. This audience, I don't hide from this audience. They know everything about me. Like, by the way, I do need to go back there was a point in 2016 where my daughter was like a month or two old, and this woman who had been giving me all the attention and affection and love that I needed unconditionally, unlike the love that I was getting from mom and dad, which a lot of it was conditional because
Mm.
I was labeled as, very clear on that, labeled as, not actually this defiant, bad, not smart, like I was labeled smart, but like my testing said not smart, ADD, kid that's bouncing off the walls and won't listen, and he's not going to make anything of himself, and just be prepared right now. Like this kid's going to be collecting garbage the rest of his life or bagging groceries. And I think my mom believed it, and my dad never believed
Mm.
it. My dad was like, "No, fuck that, man. He's a kid. Like he's a kid. He's a
Yeah,
kid
yeah,
with a lot of
yeah.
energy." But because
Hmm.
I was constantly seeking that approval from my mom, like all of us are, and really I think when my mom finally clears her stuff out, really, really authentically clears her stuff out and finds who she really is, and I pray that she
Mm.
does this in her lifetime, then that will be authentically there. But for me, it was okay. Well, now there's a baby in here, and it sounds so effed up, dude, to talk about this, but like I started, I started going out. I started not being at the house. I started getting hotel rooms and sleeping in my parents' house and sleeping over
Mm.
friends' houses. I wasn't getting what I wanted, and looking back on that, 6 years ago, looking back on that, it was so effing selfish of me. But in my mind, it was so justified. It was so clear. Like I can't get my bucket filled there anymore, and I'm gonna die without that. I have to find people that are gonna fill my bucket. So what did I do? Like most people, like most entrepreneurs, I poured myself into that business even harder. And
Mm.
those
Mm.
clients
Mm. Mm.
became the bucket fillers. And my friends became the
Yep.
bucket fillers and money and deals and checks. The problem is that I was this like this perfectly balanced being that I would just tiptoe around everybody and work as aggressively as I could, but tiptoe around you because if you left me too, or if you couldn't give me what I needed to, like, dude, this is fucked up. I mean, people think like, oh, Ian's doing really well in business, he's crushing, he's doing amazing, but they didn't realize that the guy that I was inside was so damn insecure and so
Mm.
self-concerned and so empty of approval and self-love back then that like I was doing anything I could to get it, anything, and
Mm.
it was
I hear to.
really hard.
Yeah.
So I get that, man, and I don't know if I've ever shared that story on here in full like that or in more detail like that, but maybe it's time, or it is
No,
time.
I
Yeah,
appreciate the realness and the courage, my friend. I think the thing for me, my biggest trigger is that if I get the slightest hint of rejection or abandonment, I'll take myself off the table. I'm
yeah,
not a choice. I'm not an option. You
right,
love me, or I take and it's a self-preservation thing. It
right.
is it's an insecurity, it's an ego, but I will not be rejected. I will not be abandoned again in my life, and therefore I'll take myself off the table. But the trick is, to again fill that cup up ourselves and come to the world as whole, as one as we possibly can. That might sound so cliche, but
No,
there's
it's
so
not
much
though.
power and there's so much power. This is why any man, woman, leader that's listening to this needs to double down on giving to themselves first, because that overflows. You can't give what you've not got is the often said phrase, and I'd rather people didn't realize that once they get to burnout.
Hmm.
If you want to be a great parent, you want to be a great spouse, you want to be a great anything, just imagine how much greater you'll be if you're full of love and you're able to use that.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to the elimination conversation we had a little like when the statement that I made earlier. And I had this conversation yesterday. I was in Detroit, Michigan with some really good friends, and we were talking about parenting. And I said, I don't know if there's any constant or given or like or patterning. What I can tell you as a parent is that the more I clear of my past and the more I eliminate the pain and the suffering and all the BS that I made up meaning of over, because Your parents aren't going into a situation like, man, I can't wait to fuck this kid up. You know what I mean? I can't wait to ruin this kid's life and completely put him on couches forever and ruin his psyche and have him spend 6 figures a year on coaching. Man, I can't wait to do this today. Nobody does that. Well, I mean, I'm sure
No.
there are parents out there that do that, but here's the universal, in my opinion. The universal is if you commit, or when you commit, and it's really if, to actually doing the work yourself as a human being and realizing that, yes, you are a parent and you are a spouse or you are a husband or a son or a whatever, but you need to make that commitment for you. This is you. Fill your cup first, right? Like you have to fill your cup first. This is the conversation about being selfish that I have with a lot of men in their mid 40s and mid 50s who have very high net worths, and they are the most miserable they could ever imagine being. They got the house, the cars, the kids, the wife, like this on the outside, but on the inside they are melting. And the challenge is that if you are not working on you, if you are not clearing out and removing the pain and the pain pieces, and then the distractions that hide you from the pain pieces, like work, which, by the way, your mission in life is not to be a lawyer or a CPA or a teacher. Your mission is X, and you do it through this. That's how it works. It's guaranteed. It's how it works. But if you are not,
I just shared on my Instagram story this morning. I am not a coach. I coach.
yeah, fair, totally fair. My mission in life is lived through. I'm served through coaching. Yeah, I'm not a coach. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to show up as a loving and accommodating and powerful being for people. But think about if everybody made a commitment to removing the stuff that no longer serves them in their life, mindset, thought patterns, habits, behaviors, things like that, and then they agreed to remove the distractions, job, gambling, sex, alcohol, cultural, like blaming my culture, blaming this, my medical ailments, all those distractions, which people, it's going to be very tough for it to do because they have to face the devil right in the center, like square up. But then what you do for the next generation, which is our goal, right? Your goal as a father and my goal as a father, at least from what I'm hearing, is to make sure that my kids don't go through the same shit. Like they'll have their own trauma, they'll have their own stuff to deal with.
Yeah. I'll mess up in my own unique way, but it won't be the ones
Right.
I've.
Totally. But hopefully what we will have taught them through
Yeah.
word and action is that how to clear it out, how to move through it fast, how to share something that you're going through with someone that you trust, how to be in the right friend groups and environments so that you are actually loved unconditionally. And you can really mess up and you can have conversations with your friends like, dude, I have friend groups right now that I can sit and tell them anything, deepest, darkest shit. And they're like, got you, bro. How do you need me to show up for you? Like Aaron, my partner. Anything, I tell him anything. Aaron, I robbed a bank. Got it, man. How do you need me to show up for you right now? Like, that's it. And I know that for a fact. So my fear isn't that he'll let me down. The fear is like, he'll hold me accountable. Like it's the opposite side. So that's my theory. What do you think about that? If everybody just committed to getting rid of the stuff that doesn't serve them and subsequently the distractions, then we actually show up as more of an authentic version of us.
I think so. It's exactly the words you said earlier. It's inside out, because there's a picture of my family. We're in Disney World, and it's 2018, and we're all smiling. But my daughter, she was 3 at the time, she's crying her eyes out, and it's a funny picture because we're in the happiest place in the world, and she's crying her heart out. But she looks on the outside how I felt on the inside.
Interesting.
And I was just surrounding myself with distractions, and I think, I think simply removing the distractions does not fix anything because I think we'll just put it on to the next thing.
Oh yeah,
we'll just put it on to the next thing because it's the inside out that matters most. So it's just getting clear on. For me, it's just the reason we seek to those distractions is because we're probably human beings with unmet needs.
Totally.
So the more we can gain that intimate self-awareness around what does Ryan Hartley, the flawed human being, because I accept that I'm a flawed human being because I am human. I'm not Jesus, I am human, and I'm going to fall short. And there's enough grace and space for that, and I'm worthy of being loved anyway. So what is it that he needs, and how can I give that to him? Because I know that when I give that to him, he's better for everyone else around him.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, man. And that's so simply said. It's so simply said. Except that it's not hard to do. It's challenging to let that identity go. Because that is almost like going through hell. In my opinion, I don't know if there is a heaven or a hell. I think that those of us that are lucky enough to free ourselves from the pain and build up our skills and habits to be able to continue to not let that stuff in and stick. This shit's gonna happen all the time. We're gonna fail through things. We're gonna mess stuff up. We're gonna be in pain. Are the people that actually feel the heaven in life, whereas the people that are constantly in that vicious cycle, repeating it every year, every year, they're in a personal hell. So you don't need to wait to go to hell. You're in hell.
Yeah.
In
I
here,
agree.
in here, you're in hell.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
It doesn't need to be an
Heaven and
alternate
hell
place
is.
when you die.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, it's all good.
But yeah, I believe heaven and hell are states here on earth. I believe, I think, I think hell on earth is waking up every day, feeling miserable, hating life, being addicted to things outside of us, needing, feeling like we lack. And so the heaven side of things is to connect with the state of, love. And I think, the heart math work says that when we raise our level of energy and combine that with the positive emotions, our electromagnetic field becomes a lot healthier. It sends our heart actually sends messages to the rest of our body that's more coherent, which means that we are able to recover and be more healthy. The good book says that perfect love casts out fear. Well, science says that when we're in states of love, it shuts down the production of of cortisol from the amygdala, which is fear. So there's some really cool things that science is showing to be true that just point to the fact that the more that we can pursue love, the better that we are for ourselves, the better that we are for others, and our teams, our families, our communities, our businesses, our work, everything, our bodies, that everything gets better the more we pursue love.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. Something that I was thinking about when you mentioned that was, like the forgiveness of sins, right? If I think about this a lot because I'm kind of caught in those two worlds of like, I really thank that church for what they did, from Nativity Church in Lutherville, Timonium, Maryland. They did what what a coach couldn't do at the time. They did what I've never had done, which was they helped me move out of my own way real fast, like real fast. But they never said God or Jesus will take care of you. They said it's within you. It's within you. And I was like, oh, it's within me? And they were like, yes, it's all on you. You've been empowered by. So now go take action. I'm like, oh, well, that's easy enough. Okay, I don't have to wait for anybody. But the one thing that kind of triggered me was the forgiveness of sins, right?
Yeah.
And is that, if it's in you already, like, are the forgiveness of sins just that release and that clearance? And then what happens is, like, that person's just there, that authentic is there. Like, I use the Michelangelo's David analogy a lot. It's very clear. Michelangelo said, I didn't create the David, I just chipped away the pieces of marble that weren't David, right? That's very clear, very distinct, those two sides.
Yeah.
And if that's our job here on earth, then isn't it our job to clear the sins from the past, clear the bullshit, clear the problems, the traumas, the ways of being, the attitudes, the habits, so that we can reveal our most authentic self and live in a heavenly state from here out? Because I tell you right now, dude, my life is real good. Real good.
Yeah,
and it's not that I don't deal with bullshit or pain, but my life is real good because I am committed to making sure that all that stuff stays in the past. All of it.
Yeah.
you know?
I love it. Yeah, if we're going to sit here and acknowledge that God is within us, we also have to acknowledge that there's a spiritual warfare playing out, and John Gordon's great book, The Garden, it talks about how the purpose of the enemy is to get us to doubt ourselves, or to distract us, or to deceive us, or, it's everything the enemy does is to prevent us from who we should be, who we were made to be, who we are becoming. The purpose. So there's some scripture in Isaiah that says, with the words of God, you'll soar on the wings of eagles, right? And I think the enemy is the opposite. I think enemy is like gravity, and its purpose is to keep us grounded. It's to keep us here on earth. It's to keep us from flight. It's to keep us stuck where we are, doubting who we were made to be, doubting whether we can be any good or anything. And we're fed a lie. We're deceived by that. We start to believe it. So the best thing that we can start doing is speaking truth to those lies, and just remind ourselves that we do have a purpose. We do have a set of gifts, skills, and talents. We are loved already. We do lack nothing, and we are promised a hope and a future.
Yeah, and we're 100% responsible.
Yeah,
We're
100%.
100% responsible.
That's it.
Yeah.
And when people realize that, when I love Jocko Willink and what he says
Yeah.
about extreme ownership, like, it's exactly that. When you take responsibility for everything in life, the great thing happens is that you're able then to do something about it. For as long as you look at anything external or anyone external, you're giving away your power to influence what you could influence.
Yeah. That's as simple as that. It sounds so simple, dude. It's like 1, 2, 3 equals this. Like, nice and easy. It is not that. It's not that easy, because this world we live in, at least this Western, and I mean, I guess you're considered Western culture too, right? Even though your culture is way more older than this culture, but we are a culture built of distraction, of unnecessity and unnecessary, and we don't know what we want until someone tells us what we need, and then we go buy it, and then we stay in a cycle. So we the culture that we live in is never going to let us up. That's why I love those walkabouts in green lights. And I really associated with those, because my wife kicks me out of here every like 3 or 4 weeks. Same thing. Hey, I think it's about that time, buddy. Why don't you? So all year this year, people were wondering, what are you doing in LA, man? You're away from your family. Like, why are you in LA so much? Well, I'm moving there, so I'm setting things up, and I'm building a business there, and but really, what it was it was me in a and listen, and this sounds really bougie, but it's not. I was in this house in West Hollywood on the Beverly Hills border, and then I had a house in Beverly Hills too, where I didn't have internet, I didn't have TV, I didn't have phone. I just sat and I built, and I removed as many distractions as I possibly could to make sure that my mind was as clear as possible, to get clarity and depth on our coaching curriculum. That was the biggest thing I needed to do this year, was scale our coaching business. Scaling our coaching business was the only thing that we needed, because I wasn't not happy that it wasn't as much money as I envisioned. I wasn't happy because I wasn't helping as many people as possible. And that's a very different mindset that I had from my real estate business, which was jack these checks in as fast as possible. Are the clients happy? Good. Not the most important thing. And that's honest. Now, there are some clients out there that I really loved. Like, I still do, and I still keep in touch with. They were very unconditionally supportive to me. But most people treated me like a commodity, because real estate agents are commodities until they're not. Period. But as a coach, you and I are not commodities, because the level of which we've attained thus far is not attained by everybody. And so we can help you through things that maybe another person just can't, because they just haven't been there yet. And that's okay. That's totally okay. But I needed those walkabouts. I needed that time alone. And I missed my kids, and I missed my wife, and I missed my house, and missed my friends. But dude, I got done in 3.5, 4 months what would take most people 2 years. No joke. Because I had the discipline. And I said, look, here's what you can do. Your buddy's coming into town for 2 days. You're going to hang, you're going to chill. When he leaves, The car goes back
Mm, mm,
and you are here. And if you want to go anywhere, you will walk.
yeah.
And I
I
walked.
am. I love that. So you know that Jocko says discipline equals freedom. Well, I think discipline is a word of the mind, and I think the equivalent word of the heart is devotion. And I think that devotion equals fulfillment. And when we are fulfilled, that stuff gives us more energy than it takes away.
Discipline, say that again. Discipline
Discipline equals freedom,
equals freedom.
and devotion equals fulfillment. So Jocko Willink talks about how discipline equals freedom. If you're disciplined in your work ethic, in terms of the way that you go to the gym, you'll have freedom of physical movement for longer. If you're disciplined in your financial savings, you'll have freedom to spend more. Whereas for me, if you relate, I think that's a mind thing. I think discipline is a trait of the mind.
Sure.
If we can be disciplined at things that we achieve great things, but if we haven't engaged the heart, we can get that kind of Penguins of Madagascar moment where we're like, oh, well, this sucks. I don't really like this job anymore. Not really happy. If we engage the heart and we become devoted to this one idea of, helping good people in the world pursue their own purpose and become authentic and best, we become devoted to a single idea or a mission or something like that, man, that becomes life-giving.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really simply said, man. I was going to add something to that, but I don't think there anything needs to be added. That's really great. I love that. Well, dude, I'm really grateful that you came on, man, and that you felt the same kind of universal pull. Like, I'm not going to fight this. This guy wants me on. Let's do it. Let's roll. Because I think this conversation was awesome. Seriously awesome. Very powerful for the audience too. And thank you for holding that space for me to share more of me than the audience just doesn't know.
Yeah.
That they don't know. Because I don't realize that I haven't talked about as much depth as I can. And by the way, that led to divorce attorneys. Like, it was going. It was heading straight down the mountain. And then a divorce attorney said to me, "It's the biggest mistake of your life. You're going to pay me for this session regardless. It's the biggest mistake of your life." And at that time, I didn't love me, so I couldn't love her. I couldn't see what it was going to be. I couldn't see anything past the checks, because the checks made me significant. And he said, "I'm not going to help you." And I was like, "Well, that's what she wants." And he goes, "She wants that because you're an asshole. But she wants you because she knows who you are." Kind of chokes me up a little bit still, because she said that to me in a marriage like counseling session. I said, "Why the fuck do you stay with me? Like, I'm such an asshole." She goes, "You're not. That's just a scared little boy version of you. I know the real you, and that real you is I'm just hoping that guy comes back." And so after that, it was like,
Powerful.
fuck, man. Like, if she would have been protesting and jumping up and down and screaming and calling me names, I would have been out. But that also would have given me an excuse to not have to be. But all she did was like intensify and turn every light in the entire room on me. She's like, "What are you going to do? Are you going to honor your commitment to be the best dad and husband, or are you not?" And I was like, "If I'm going to do this, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for everybody. And I'm going to build a coaching business out of it." And that's how this whole thing started.
Powerful, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Takes courage, and I think sometimes those conversations are really hard because there are two people in that room. There are two people in a relationship, and quite often we can go, "Well, you're not doing what you need to do either." And the minute we start to do the tit for tat, we've all lost. So that extreme ownership is just a case of you're not owning everything and everybody's contribution. You're simply owning everything that you're contributing.
Dude, you're dropping bombs to the last minute here.
Yeah, it's like they say, if you give enough typewriters to enough monkeys, sooner or later one of them will write Shakespeare. I just say enough things and hope that something good comes out.
Well, dude, Ryan Hartley, always better than yesterday. Where can people find you, man?
Yes, you find me on Instagram at Ryan B. Hartley. Probably the best place is my website, ryanhartley.co.uk. So all the links to the good places in terms of coaching community, YouTube. Yeah, so and the podcast too.
Awesome. Well, dude, look, this has been A real pleasure. A real pleasure. And I
Thank you,
want to
man.
I want to figure out a way. There's like vibes that I feel with people. I'd love to our front runner events, our retreats, our weekend retreats and our weekly retreats, their personal involvement retreats. I'd love to figure out a way to do something with you over across the pond, man. I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, get some of your
Yeah.
clients together, some of our international clients together in London or some beach town in like North England. Like that'd be awesome, you know?
Mate, you've said it now. You've spoken it into existence, so it's our duty to try and make that happen. So,
Done. And it will. And it will be done.
pre- thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing and
Yeah.
the ripple effect that your voice is going to have, my friend. I'm really grateful to join you.
Yeah, dude. Likewise. Likewise. So, all right, cool. Audience, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.